World War I generated new demands for armored self-propelled weapons which could navigate any kind of terrain, and this led to the development of the tank. The great weakness of the tank predecessor, the armored car, was that it required smooth terrain to move upon, and new developments were needed for cross-country capability. The first offensive using tanks took place on 15 September 1916 during the Battle of the Somme. 49 of the Mark I type were committed, of which 32 were mechanically fit to take part in the advance and achieved some small local successes. Not until 20 November 1917 at Cambrai did the British Tank Corps get the conditions it needed for success. Over 400 tanks penetrated almost 6 miles on a 7-mile wide front. However, success was not complete because the infantry failed to exploit and secure the tanks' gains, and almost all the territory gained was recaptured by the Germans. The Australian, Canadian, and British forces then scored a far more significant victory the following year on 8 August 1918 with 600 tanks in the Battle of Amiens. General Erich Ludendorff referred to that date as the Black Day of the German Army. Parallel to the British development, France designed its own tanks. The first two, the medium Schneider CA and heavy St. Chamond, were not well conceived, though produced in large numbers and showing technical innovations, the latter using an electromechanical transmission and a long 75 mm gun. In 1918, the Renault FT light tank was the first tank in history with a modern configuration, a revolving turret on top and an engine compartment at the rear. It would be the most numerous tank of the war. A last development was the Super Heavy Char 2C, the largest tank ever to see service some years after the armistice. The German response to the Cambrai assault was to develop its own armored program. Soon the massive A7V appeared. The A7V was a clumsy monster, weighing 30 tons and with a crew of 18. By the end of the war, only 20 had been built. The first American-produced heavy tank was the 43.5-ton Mark VIII, sometimes known as the Liberty, a used British development of the successful British heavy tank design intended to equip the Allied forces. Armed with 2 6-pounder cannons and 5 rifle-caliber machine guns, it was operated by an 11-man crew and had a maximum speed of 6.5 miles per hour and a range of 50 miles. Because of production difficulties, only test vehicles were completed before the war ended. The American-built 6.5-ton M1917 light tank was a close copy of the French Renault FT. It had a maximum speed of 5.5 miles per hour and could travel 30 miles on its 30-gallon fuel capacity. Again, because of production delays, none were completed in time to see action. In the summer of 1918, a 3-ton, 2-man tank, Ford 3-ton M1918 originated by the Ford Motor Company was designed. It was powered by 2 Ford Model T 4-cylinder engines armed with a 0.30-inch machine gun and had a maximum speed of 8 miles per hour. It was considered unsatisfactory as a fighting vehicle, but to have possible value in other battlefield roles. American tank units first entered combat on 12 September 1918 against the St. Mihiel salient with the First Army. After World War I, General Erich Ludendorff of the German High Command praised the Allied tanks as being a principal factor in Germany's defeat. The Germans had been too late in recognizing their value to consider them in their own plans. Even if their already hard-pressed industry could have produced them in quantity, fuel was in very short supply. Of the total of 90 tanks fielded by the Germans during 1918, 75 had been captured from the Allies. At the war's end, the main role of the tank was considered to be that of close support for the infantry. Although the tank of World War I was slow, clumsy, unwieldy, difficult to control, and mechanically unreliable, its value as a combat weapon had been clearly proven. The German tanks were not up to the standards of Guderian's concept. The Panzer I was really a machine gun-armed tankette, derived from the British Carden Loyd tankette. The Panzer II did have a 20 mm cannon, but little armor protection. These two vehicles made up the bulk of Panzer units until 1940. In 1931, France decided to produce armor and other equipment in larger quantities, including the Char B-1 bis. World War II forced armies to integrate all the available arms at every level into a mobile, flexible team. The mechanized combined arms force came of age in this war. In 1939, most armies still thought of an armored division as a mass of tanks with relatively limited support from the other arms. During the war, German tank design went through at least 3 generations, plus constant minor variations. The first generation included such pre-war vehicles as the Panzerkampfwagen or Panzer I and II, which were similar to Soviet and British light tanks. The Germans converted their tank battalions to a majority of Panzer III and Panzer IV medium tanks after the 1940 French campaign. The appearance of large numbers of the new generation T-34 and KV-1 Soviet tanks that were unknown to Germans until 1941 compelled them to join a race for superior armor and gun power. The third generation included many different variants, but the most important designs were the Panther or Panzer V and Tiger or Panzer VI tanks. The Sturmgeschütz III would turn out to be Germany's most produced armored fighting vehicle of any type during the war at just over 9,300 examples, a popular design which could also be very effectively tasked to perform the duties of a dedicated anti-tank vehicle. Tank designs of World War II were based upon many complex considerations, but the principal factors were those thought to be best supported by combat experience. Among these, early combat proved that a bigger tank was not necessarily a better tank. The development goal came to be a tank combining all the proven characteristics in proper balance, to which weight and size were only incidentally related. The key characteristics were mechanical reliability, firepower, mobility, and protection. Many of the changes in tank design have been refinements to targeting and ranging, gun stabilization, communications, and crew comfort. Armor evolved to keep pace with improvements in weaponry. The rise of composite armor is of particular note, and guns grew more powerful. However, basic tank architecture did not change significantly and has remained largely the same into the 21st century. That's all for today. See you in another video.